What up, y'all? Can whoever's in here hear me? Just waiting on Mr. Andre to pay attention to his phone because he's kicking it at the bar, I think. What's good, Theodore? Mimi? Got the messages to do. After I finish. Hey, what's up, boss? After I finish sending out all these messages. There has to be a way to send a link to all of your messenger contacts at the same time. Can y'all hear me okay, though? How many more do I got? Okay, cool. How's y'all day? Officially, this is my first day back home. Officially, even though I was here yesterday. So today was pretty chill. Didn't get 20,000 calls like I expected. Yeah, I'm gonna have to set this some way to do it like automatically. There we go. I'm gonna text this dude. If you're paying attention, that is me. I mean, no, that's not me in the picture. All right. A few names I had to skip over. I said, "How's y'all's day?" Without this thing, I don't know what's going on with my mouse. Yeah, I don't like using the mouse on the keyboard. Put out this link one more time for this guy. No one's gonna tell me how their day was while we're waiting on Mr. Andre. That's cool. I don't want to know how y'all's day was, anyways. Not my show. Turn down my volume. There he is, looking all light skinned and stuff.
I gotta get back to the hotel. Hold up.
He's getting chased by booty warriors, y'all.
Bro, I felt like a total boot. I'm walking around Virginia Beach in a Marine Corps hoodie, wearing running shoes.
I'll play a boot real quick.
Straight up.
I was like,
Boots good dude.
Peabody's is down the street.
Yo, Peabody's is down the street. That's the crazy. See, what's funny, bro, is I was gonna tell the other attorneys, like, damn, me and my boy, me and Warlord, we should stomp around here, but I didn't want to say anything because I don't know, man, I feel weird. You know what I mean?
I started going to the other one.
That's old Alex or Warlord. Damn, Andre. You know what I
Yeah,
meant.
other club, Peppermint or whatever you call it. Matter of fact, Mimi, you live down there. You know about Peabody's and Peppermint? And he's frozen on the elevator, I think.
I am. I'm on the elevator. My bad, bro. I told you I was gonna be a little.
Man, I don't care. Let me get like there's two more people pop in. I'll read off my little thing.
All right. I'm almost in the room. No diddy.
Man, I bet you got all the baby oil open there, huh?
Shut up. Anyways,
You
all
got
right,
a
hold
roommate?
on. All right.
You think on your coworkers?
No, I don't have.
Yeah, you do.
All right, hold up. So now I just need to do one more thing. I need to.
Cool. We got 7 in here. As soon as he stops freezing, I'm gonna read this. Since today's topic is on patriotism, and I just did that my little marathon thing. So I was sitting there. I was like, well, what can we talk about on Tuesday? Because I think we went through most of the list. And then I was like, well, I'm doing this marathon for Tunnels to Towers. So,
Good
no
job.
patriotism.
Hold up.
So,
All right, cool. There.
so we'll talk about
Internet's good. We should be able to. Let's go.
damn. Why are we dropping? Why you from about to start reading my thing? Y'all bogus.
Do
Y'all
your
don't want to
thing.
hear it? Y'all
Of course.
gonna hear it. All right. So this is a short story or bio of a man. Yeah, I've never met, but you know, I feel somewhat close to his family, the organization that was started after his death, his heroic death. His name is Stephen Stellar. All right. So it says firefighter Stephen Gerard Seller was the youngest of 7 children born to May and George Seller. At the age of 8, Stephen lost his father, and a year and a half later, his mother passed away, leaving him an orphan to be raised by his older siblings. For a while, Stephen went through a period of struggle, but thanks to the love of his siblings and the values instilled into him by his parents, he grew up to be an extraordinary individual and dedicated firefighter. More than most, he knew that time was precious and accomplished much in his 34 years. On September 11th, 2001, Stephen, who was assigned to Brooklyn Squad 1, had just finished his shift and was on his way to play golf with his brothers. When he got word over his scanner of a plane hitting the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Upon hearing the news, Stephen called his wife, Sally, and asked her to tell his brothers he would catch up with them later. He returned to Squad 1 to get his gear. Stephen drove his truck, his personal truck, y'all, his truck to the entrance of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, but it had already been closed for security purposes. Determined to carry out his duty, he strapped 60 pounds of gear to his back and raced on foot through the tunnel to the Twin Towers, where he gave up his life while saving others. Hence the name of the organization, Tunnels to Towers. Stephen had everything to live for: a great wife, 5 wonderful children, a devoted extended family, and friends. Stephen's parents were lay. I do not know this word. Franciscans, and he grew up under the guiding philosophy of Saint Francis of Assisi. I always said it wrong. Whose encouraging and inspirational phrase, "While we have time, let us do good," were words that Stephen lived by. Stephen's life and heroic death serve as a reminder to us all to live life to the fullest and to spend our time here on earth doing good. This was his legacy. So, in regards to our discussion on patriotism today, to me, he's the ideal of what pops to, I'll say, most of our heads when we say patriot, or even more a hero. And I was gonna start off by asking Mr. Andre. Well, I guess I'll first ask you what do you think about that, and then my question is, you know, just to start off, just the beginning of the conversation, what is patriotism to you? Before we talk about whether it should be too much, too little, or good or bad.
So first, to answer the question explicitly, I think that's a really cool story. I mean, someone felt a calling, felt compelled to go, and when they heard something was happening, going wrong, and they felt that they had the ability to actually get involved and save lives and help, bring about some positivity in a horrific event, they did that, and I respect that. I respect that. I wholeheartedly do. So first things first, yeah, I think that that is an awesome example of true patriotism. Secondly, for me, patriotism, or to be a patriot in the most simplistic form, is willing to put your country ahead of yourself. It is national pride, and it is symbolic of an individual's desire or urge to promote or emphasize, what's up, God body, their nation over themselves. That's what I would first argue is a patriotism. So yeah, that's a very moving story, though. That's a very moving story.
I agree. I guess before I get more into it, I'll explain a little bit. So that marathon, it's not super duper long. It's a 5K, and most of it is, well, half of it is through the battery tunnel where he ran through with his gear to make it to the World Trade Center. My mouse is still acting stupid. And then the rest is kind of like, most of it is the route, his route he took to the World Trade Center. So from that, his family, they're very patriotic. They started the organization Tunnel to Towers to help out, police fighters, firemen, uh, veterans, and just even government employees. Because I think they helped out UPS and the postal service. Like people get injured, or say they pass away, they'll pay off their family's mortgage for them, stuff like that. And and they don't just do that and leave it at that. They try to be family oriented. They're growing a lot, so it's a little harder, but families that key thing. But yeah, for me, first thing that generally pops to mind, yeah, you can walk it if you want. Yeah. Anyways, the patriotism that pops to mind, or what pops to my mind when I say or hear patriotism, it's kind of like what Andre said. Somebody, I would say, just like proud of who they're, proud of their country, the flaws and the positives. Um, like, just all about their country over others.
And I think, see, that's the issue, right? The issue is proud of your country over others. So I think patriotism, to a certain degree, I wouldn't say it doesn't necessitate a delineation between one country to another. I think if you just look at it narrowly, you just say, hey, it is having pride in your nation of origin, being proud of the nation that you were born in. I think that is patriotism. Now, I think there's a difference between that and my country is better than every other country in the world. That, I think, would be like xenophobia. I think if we just look at it in the most basic, narrow, overly emphasized, overly concentrated form, patriotism is just, I mean, I'm proud of being American. Like, that's what it is. Patriotism is that. American pride, pride in your nation. I think that's the best way to go about it, because I think the moment that you have to say, well, the moment that there is a comparison, I think that
is inherently damaging, or I would even go so far as to say,
Just I said it so many times.
no, I don't, Solid. No, I don't. But I think that that's what I would argue, Warlord. I mean, it's not even arguing, man. I'm just saying that I would want to narrow or more effectively refine what patriotism is, because I don't think it necessarily implies that you are comparing your nation to another nation. I just think it is more oriented on the nation you were born in. That's what I think. That's what I would push.
Well, yeah, but in my opinion, I didn't say that. I said, my country before others. I'm not saying my country is better than others, but at the same time, my opinion on that is my country is better than other countries. I don't care about other countries the same way I care about this country. It's like I like other countries, but I don't really care about other countries. You know
That's
me.
not
I'm
patriotism, though, is it? That's just an
say what?
indifference. I said that's not patriotism. That's just simple indifference.
No. I'm saying my opinion on whether we're better or not than other countries. I said, yeah, we are, in my opinion. But I'm
But you
saying
don't have to
my
believe. But my pushback is you
patriotism.
don't have to believe we're better than other countries to be a patriot.
That's what I'm saying to you. My definition of patriotism isn't getting into whether we're better or not. I'm saying I'm proud of my country over others. When you just go to my pure definition of patriotism,
Okay, and when you say I'm proud of my country over others,
yeah,
what you're
we're
saying
others.
is not that I am I am happy that my country is better than that other country. You're just simply saying I don't care about other countries. I only care about mine, right?
No, you're adding that.
Okay, what are you
Said
saying then?
I said it like three times. I said, well, now I'm just talking about patriotism. I'm proud. I'm proud of this country. I'm thinking about this
Yes.
country. Happy for this country over others. I could be. I could be.
What
I
do you
don't
mean
know.
by over others?
I'm not thinking about them when it comes to patriotism. Put
Okay.
it this way. Who uses the word patriot more than us? British people do, and Australian people do. When they say it, I think most of the time they say a little bit more, thinking a little bit more extreme than us. But again, they're thinking about their country. They're not thinking about other countries. Now, when you added what you added, I'm saying to add to that though, if you want my opinion, and yes, to me, our country is better than other countries. Like I could have been born in I don't know Ghana and grew up here, but have this same mindset that this warlord we talk to right now has. As I would be proud of America over Ghana or whatever other country I was born in. That's a part of the patriot part.
That for you is a part of the patriot definition.
Yep, part
Okay,
of my
yeah.
patriot. Yeah,
And
that's
I
what it means.
think that's where the rubber meets the road. That's our issue. I don't
Why?
think that to be a patriot necessarily entails anything referring to another country. I think it is our country exclusively. It's just
What does
it
patriotic mean?
doesn't take. Say again.
I said, what does patriotic mean?
I think it's that. I just think it is only national pride. I think it does not in any way imply or include or refer to another country. I don't think it's needed. And I think the reason why I can say I don't think it's needed is because you could be proud of your country and acknowledge that a country is superior in other aspects, but still have pride in your country and to that degree still be considered a patriot. You can be patriotic and not xeno or have hate. That opens a can of worms when you include Confederate flags. That's an interesting opinion because I think is bringing up a different approach because he could then take it
No,
a step back and say,
that's
well,
it.
I'm proud of my country, but the country I'm referring to is the country pre-Civil War. Is that still a patriot? I don't know. I would be inclined to say no, only because the Confederacy viewed their definition of nation did not include the existence of the Union. It
So
implied a
let's go ahead and get this straight for those people that
let's
doesn't
do
know.
it.
The Confederacy, they weren't just about slavery. They had a lot of other different ideas. We won the war. The Union won. So to me, I wouldn't include it unless you're somebody that's like, no, proud, or I rock the Confederate flag and the U.S. flag because I'm from the South or whatever. I'm not knocking the reason why you do it. I'm just making it clear. The Confederacy and the Union, they weren't the same countries. They weren't the exact same country. The only thing that dividing them is one wanted slavery, one didn't. No, there's a lot more to it than that.
Okay,
That's what I
yeah.
mean.
Hold up. Yeah. Is that true? There's more aspects to it, of course, but a foundational and pivotal principle that the Confederacy was built upon was the perceived notion that minorities, specifically African Americans, were inherently inferior. That is a principle. It was in their
That's a part of it.
it was the one of the most important aspects of it. I think it was even stated in their oh my gosh, the document it was written by Alexander. Oh, it was like their it was the document that they used to secede from the Union. It was the vice president of the Confederacy, Alexander something, signed it, and the last like page and a half specifically goes in depth as it pertains to why African Americans in particular are inferior. It is very much a nationalism and patriotism.
Listen to what I'm saying.
Are they the same?
Listen. So it's like, I'm putting it this way. So the Union won. So if you were to call yourself a patriot, and then you say I'm all for the Confederacy, technically you would be a patriot of the Confederacy. You want to be a patriot of what is our government, what is our country right now. That's what I'm saying. Because
okay, so then I would then imply, to answer Theodore's question, Warlord, there's a difference between nationalism and patriotism by what you just described.
Yeah, but we're not even talking about nationalism though.
No, but to answer his question, Theodore Bremer asked the question. I think that question can be answered with what you just said.
Yes.
Yeah, he said, is nationalism and patriotism the same? I'm inclined to say it's not. They're two different aspects. No. Nationalism is focused on a pride based upon the nation that you inhabit, whereas patriotism, I would argue, goes to a notion that the morals, principles, ideals, maxims of your nation are what you adhere to. An individual who is a firm proponent of the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth, Fifth, a person who believes that those are to be held sacred and should be in no way infringed or in some way minimized. I would say they are a patriot. But a person who simply says America is a country that I love, I'm grateful to be here, I'm grateful to have been born here, is a nationalist. I wouldn't argue that inherently baked into the definition of nationalism is an aspect of national superiority. I don't think that you would argue that. Ignore Serial.
There you go. I missed the end of what he said, but no, it's not. It's not the same. All right, I don't.
No, we're agreeing, Warlord. They're not the same. The two concepts are not the same.
I'm talking to Theodore, not you.
All right.
He asked the question, not you.
I was reaffirming what you said, that they're not the same.
Andre is married to two people. One is a guy that he keeps hiding from his wife, and the other is his wife.
Okay, first of all, we're 24 minutes into this. You can't be making jokes like that, man. No. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I totally and completely support anyone whose lifestyle matches what Warlord just described. However, I am married. She's an awesome woman. I don't deserve her, and I'm almost guaranteeing that she's going to be pissed off because I should have FaceTimed her like 20 minutes ago. So my bad. But I think that's an interesting aspect. The whole notion that because I think you alluded to it in the beginning before actually digging deep into it. This idea that nationalism to a certain degree can be bad. And you didn't say it can be bad. You argued that, or you posed the question of is it good or bad? And I think that really hinges on the thought of of this false dichotomy that comes with being a nationalist, right? Being someone who loves their nation, because you could argue, and I think I would have to, is if you are a nationalist or a person who firmly believes in national pride, inherently in that idea is a concept of us versus them. Because if you are a nationalist and you inherently agree that there are individuals who are not from your nation, you would have to accept that that implication is baked into your definition of nationalism or national pride, right? I love where I'm from. I am happy that I was born from this particular nation. Ergo, anyone who is born in this particular nation and agrees with me is this. However, if you are not born in my nation, you are not that. It is a or B. So it's disjunctive inherently. So I just, is that bad? I would argue it's not bad until you determine that being not a patriot is a problem. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the issue. The issue is if individuals are patriotic inherently or are patriotic as a result of being born in this country, that there's something wrong with that. I think that's the problem.
I'm gonna get to your question in just a second, Theodore. Really quick though, nationalism and national pride, those are kind of they lead to the same thing, but national pride is not the same as nationalism though. Nationalism is starts to get into the realm of what you said earlier, xenophobic. F all other countries but this country. But then national pride is more like, I have pride in my nation.
But I think that's an interesting point. Is nationalism or being a nationalist footsteps towards xenophobia? Or is that like step one or a prerequisite to being xenophobic? I would argue yes. It has to be, because if you perceive other nations as less than, or if you view your country as the best, then you necessarily must conclude that other countries are not the best. Now, just because they're not the best doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad, but I think that would be the next jump that you could make, whether you think that being from a different nation is inherently wrong, or whether you have a fear of those from a different nation. I think that would be unique to the individual. Patriotism is knocking somebody down, peace off, for talking dime on America. I can't read. Patriotism is knocking somebody's dome piece off for talking down on America. D Hill, WarTalkWithWarlord would agree with you entirely. He also is a firm believer in the humbling of non-patriots. He definitely, that's his 4th of July. He doesn't like fireworks, WarTalkWithWarlord. He goes xeno hunting. That's what he calls it, xeno hunting. So
I don't. I generally set off fireworks and shoot a few guns and use my
people.
My dang, you can't say nothing on YouTube no more. My whatever you call it voice, America type voice.
Do you call the United States of America just America with an M? Hey, D Hill.
On 4th of July when I shoot off my guns into the air.
We gotta be better. We gotta do better.
Nope.
We have.
And then I also say, do you see this doormat? This doormat right here says "Not welcome."
You see this tattoo? It says "Not welcome." That is hilarious. Oh my gosh, I love that movie. You shouldn't love that movie, but it's a good one.
It's a good movie.
There were some dark jokes in that movie too.
Nowadays, but it's a good movie.
It's a good movie, but it's a dark movie. There's the jokes too. You only needed 2 stitches. That's a dark joke. That's a dark joke. But again, I don't want to waste people's time, so I think to explicitly get to it, WarTalkWithWarlord. Do you think patriotism could ever become bad?
Or is it just nationalism? Yes.
Okay. So then patriotism, Is patriotism inherently bad?
Nope, not at all.
Is
Not for
is
anybody in any country.
nationalism inherently bad?
Man, I want to say no, but you're right. Oh, you asked my question. Anyways, but what comes to mind is a lot of those World War II movies when you would have young dudes in South Africa that were from Britain, but they're trying to decide who do I want to side with. But I don't even know if I can say that on YouTube now. The Nazis or what are they called, or the Allies, and it's like the young men that would side with the Nazis, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm a true patriot," So it's like, or nationalist. So it's like that's what tends to come to mind. Now, again, movies always shift what things mean and pervert some things. So I don't know for sure. That one I didn't look up, but that's what comes to mind.
Warlord.
Hmm.
You would agree that there's departments in the government that are to a certain degree involved very intimately with the promotion of certain concepts, right? And I mean in the entertainment industry.
If C texts that to you to ask me, tell her to come up here and ask that. But
she didn't ask me that. I just asked that myself. I'm a big boy.
It looked like he was reading something.
Well, that's because I'm smart. So.
Yeah. What's your question again?
Warlord, do you agree that there are departments or agencies within our government that are intimately involved in engineering or promoting certain concepts in the entertainment industry?
Yeah. Well, it's like I do.
So then I guess my question now is,
yes.
So then, I mean, I would think that movies that promote very, very patriotic messages or nationalistic messages, it would be safe to assume that they were probably in some way influenced or kind of co-signed or greenlit by a government agency, right?
Yep. Now, even though it's kind of off subject in the way of it's not our country, but we kind of laid out we did tell them, why don't they try this? Look at South Korea. The whole K-pop industry, that is government funded to bring money into the government with their military stuff. We gave them that idea, not thinking they would take it serious, but they did, and it obviously worked out because you see kids all over the place, all over the world, aiming to Gundam style. But to your question, yeah, definitely. Now I can't think of one, but there's plenty of government funded movies. More of them 80s and earlier, but I feel like those are more recent ones that I just read about not too long ago.
Theodore's comments are wild.
Theodore, if you want to become a citizen, then you need to spend your time as a hell diver.
That's facts, actually. All jokes aside, America, I can't believe Saul said that about me. That's hurtful. All jokes aside, America is very much, I think it's leaning towards this whole hell diver concept. I think so. And it's funny, obviously, but what'd you say, Warlord?
So I don't think we're going that far anytime soon towards just a ridiculous budget and send people in mass numbers to get wrecked by a whole bunch of stuff. Even though that's kind of what some wars and battles has been about, but not exactly.
I was about to say, Warlord, I was about to say, I'm like, I could have swore there was some, yeah, I don't know, Vietnam.
There you go, Captain America.
I'm just saying. Oh shoot, yeah, that's true. Theodore's right. Comics had a whole era of World War II propaganda, World War II Hulk. I think that's an interesting. Right. So then therein lies the rub. I think there's another aspect that we need to talk about. if it has to be promoted, if it has to be artificially perpetuated or inflated by a third party, how, like, I don't want to say it, but how good could that be? Like, if it's not inherently within you, if it has to be pushed towards you, if you aren't becoming aware of it, I don't know. Maybe the thought is for me, if it's not, if it doesn't reside in you already and it has to be pushed on you, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem like it's, I don't know. It just doesn't seem.
Right. Who said it's right?
I, well, didn't we say that patriotism's a good thing? Like, we said it was okay.
Yeah. But I've never looked at patriotism as being pushed on people. I've never
But
seen
we
it.
just talked about departments of the government that influence, impact, or at least have an agenda that
Oh,
is carried
you mean like,
out by the entertainment industry.
so I kind of view things like that, like this. If they don't hide the fact they funded that movie or something like that, I don't see it as them trying to push it. I see more like more closer to the propaganda, closer to the advertisement side of things.
Yeah, but it's not like we
Oh,
know,
well,
right? Saving Private Ryan wasn't like, hey, everyone, this was funded by the U.S. government. You didn't know that.
I don't think it was, bro. The World War II movies is a popular genre.
Yeah, you don't think that they got greenlit or co-signed by some type of U.S. department?
Well, every movie has to be greenlit. Yeah, so does everything we eat and drink. That's every
Which
country, bro.
means they are approving or accepting of the impact or influence that whatever product that's out is having on us. They're
But at
aware
the
of
same,
it.
but at the same time, they also approve movies that's saying the government is complete garbage. You got
Okay,
to think
first
about that
let's
part,
name one that says the government's complete garbage. Because in my
bro.
mind, I think,
You
yeah,
need
they may
to
co-sign that. Oops, sorry. I think that they may say, yeah, they co-sign that, but at the same time, it's like, how are those movies advertised? How are they interpreted or congested? How are they reviewed by movie critics? Like,
V for Vendetta. Almost any movie where the main bad guy you find out is your whole government. Now, again, if they're thinking that deep into it, I'm saying, like, what are they called? The ESRB rating people. That's government, but they're not thinking of. Oh, you said that the military is stupid, so no, you can't watch that. They're they're looking at, okay, this is too much for the average consumer. It's too violent. You need to tone it down or X the whole project. You know what I'm saying? It's like
let's hope that's
yeah,
the case. Maybe this is my tinfoil hat coming out, but I feel like you could easily masquerade your true intentions in the cloak of, well, viewer discretion is advised, or this is rated MA for mature audiences only, or whatever. I don't know. We love you too, worship ICEG, but I don't know. This is just
I think you're Robert
empty
Horn.
years.
Bro, you don't even have to go as far as Thanos. I don't think Thanos was propaganda. You can say Red Skull. Red Skull was completely made to represent the Nazis originally.
That's true. That's true. I'm gonna be back in 20 seconds. Hold on.
No problem.
Just keep doing you.
He has some street. He has some street tacos, y'all. Wait, did he just ask me to mute you? You just asked me to mute you? Is there a way to turn up the volume? Thanks. I think he's using the bathroom. Never mind. Well, I kind of lost my back and forth there. So let me see what Theodore is talking about. I couldn't think of a good one. Yeah, Red Skull, and I don't know if in for those of y'all that might be kind of lost, we're talking about in Marvel Comics, Red Skull was like the originator of like the bad guy syndicate called Hydra. And I know more modern that they make Hydra kind of Nazi like, but instead of being racist. They're more so xenophobic against anything that's not human, no, a normal human, pretty much. Just so y'all know where we're at. But a lot of the more modern day Marvel stuff has made Hydra kind of Nazi like, but I'm not sure if that's how they were. Well, yeah, they would have to be originated that way if Red Skull was originated to be like a Hitler or whatever. I think Theodore's lying to me. Now, while we're waiting on him to get back, we're kind of in it a little bit right now, but it's like we're going to get into also, is there such thing as can you be too patriotic? And like I said, we kind of hit on that. And also, uh, the question of like, is there too little patriotism? But that's more for like somebody that's like, they're like, I love my country, I love the people, I'm proud of the country. But and then can you say to somebody, well, how come you don't do enough? How come you don't try to get people to go out there? I don't know, vote whoever you want to vote for. How come you don't? I just had it in my head. Oh, pretty much you're almost like a whole military or government walking advertisement yourself. Can there be such thing as too little? I'm gonna pause for a moment, get these comments. Oh, just God body trying to throw a wrench in it. I don't think she's the guy, but I personally think she's definitely telling stories about a lot of things. Yes, I've heard it from plenty of people. I'm not voting for her based off of race, but just because the fact that she tries to use that as a campaign thing. And honestly, I don't think I've ever heard her. I haven't heard her say herself that she's black, but at the same time, she never corrects nobody. But it's like I guess people had shown things of her history before, but more recently, people are like breaking down stuff, like even back to the book she wrote in 2019. But not the topic we're on at the moment. Yeah, I just said she's not black. Um, Man, I kind of need his back and forth, but one of the things I was going to get on are presidents. Do we feel like in any of our presidents we had wasn't patriotic enough?
God body's out of control. Why would he write that?
Because of what I just said.
Diabolical. Where did he go? I went to go make a phone call. Akon is, yes, we know this. Yes, she's not. I heard that too. He didn't ask for mute.
The question was going to be the next part. Is there such thing, since you kind of got into a little bit, is there being too patriotic? Is there such thing as somebody that says, proud of my country, I love my country, love people, this, and that. But and then would it be fair for somebody to someone, well, you're not patriotic enough. You don't do enough. Like I don't. Like I said, you don't go out there and try to tell people about the military or different government jobs, or even it doesn't even have to be that. It's like you don't do enough in your community. Now, me honestly, I feel like no, that's the answer to me is no. No such thing is not patriotic enough. I mean, just loving your country and your people is patriotic enough to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That argument seems very peculiar. You didn't do enough. It just seems very. Yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with it. It just doesn't have much impact behind it. But I do think that maybe there's an argument or notion behind, well, if you are so patriotic, how do you display that patriotism? How do you demonstrate to others that you are proud of the country you came from? That might be an issue, but it isn't a gauge if you're just not patriotic enough. That just seems But
And I see. I only say that because I'm pretty sure that there is some dum dums out there that would be like, oh, well, you're not patriotic enough. Is there any reason why
yeah,
the
you say you
question?
love America, but you didn't do this or you didn't do that. And I get that. I mean, I
I
do.
mean, you turn around and be like, well, okay, well, what did you do? Or, well, how come you didn't do this? And how come you didn't do that? You know what I'm saying?
No, that's fair.
That's
Fair.
argument to smash off play.
I just do you have to do something to be a patriot? If you love this country and
I don't think so.
God, body's wild. But no, I don't know, man. I feel like but does patriotism get gauged by others? So like hypothetically, Warlord hypothetically, Warlord loves America. Warlord does love America. But if
My
I
America is
said I love America and Warlord joins the military and makes a career out of it, however, I only just work with the State Department. Is there a difference between my level and his level of patriotism? Are they the same? Are they different? It's I would say that they are different levels of patriotism. I would say also that they're not different. They're the same. It's just one displays its patriotism more frequently and more zealously, whereas others don't. The line between patriotism and I guess discrimination on the high end is easy to decipher, but to be overbearing, you ain't black type, I think is interesting. That's also a thing. See, I feel like there's more of an issue or concern with what Theodore brought up compared to that same rationale behind patriotism. To say, well, you're not patriotic enough because you didn't do this or you didn't do that. I don't, that seems like a stretch. But to say, hey, well, you're not black enough. You don't like this. You don't like that. You don't believe this. I think that's a real issue.
of course.
I think
It's
that's
not
a real problem.
right, but it has nothing to do with patriotism. To me, people that say stuff like that has some insecurities in themselves to where they're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not black enough when it comes to this or that. And
Yeah,
also,
but to be black doesn't necessarily require a declaration. It almost necessitates third party validation. Because if I say I'm black enough, then it 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 entails the affirmation of others with that statement. And
right, that's what
I
I'm
think
saying.
that's the difference between patriotism and ethnic identity, right? If you simply say I am from America, people are going to say, okay, cool. Why? Because inherently baked in the idea of Americanism or being an American is the idea and the concept that, well, it's a melting pot. Anyone could look like anything and be born in America. You don't have a particular characteristic or attribute or quality that is assigned to the nation of America. Whereas being, let's go with African American or black, air quote, you do have
I'm also not
attributes, qualities, concepts that are associated or baked in with this idea. There's a difference.
Theodore, did you get cussed out for saying some dumb shit like that last time? You
Damn.
stupid fuck. Bro, I told you you always start out good and you start getting stupid.
Wait, Theodore
That's
was
why
the guy from the other panel?
I'll punch you in the stomach. Say what?
Theodore's the other guy from the panel?
Yeah. I told you
Damn. Why he so
he,
he comfortable with
he
going
has
high and to the right? That's crazy.
yeah, no, see, it doesn't bother me, but other people in here. That's why Solid cussed him out last time. I told him to chill off of that.
I think if you love your country and do your best for it wherever you play it, that's perfect patriotism. God body, I don't
Other
know
than
though. I don't
to
know.
watch
And this is my pushback. This is my pushback. With that same argument, the general medics are they're all vital patriots. Yeah, in my mind, okay. So I think I think to a certain degree there is a hierarchy of patriotism, right?
Mhm.
The
You never
example,
had
the
New
foot
York.
soldier, Theodore. I think he is the Indian dude. But yeah, the foot soldier, the medic, the
Thank you.
guys on the front lines, the general, those people actually fighting for the war. I would argue they're patriots. Now, what makes them patriots? I would also go out on a limb and say patriotism is really the true and total belief that your country is more important than yourself. I say that's patriotism. I say embracing or positively viewing American attributes or qualities or principles is good. That's fine. But if you don't actually put your country before yourself, I would argue you're not a patriot. You're just a guy who loves your country. You love America. You love Argentina. You love Ecuador. You love England, whatever. But you're not a patriot because patriots do what others won't. And I think that that's the difference between the Americans who put the yellow ribbon up and put the damn sticker, support our troops up, and the buckos that sign, or the madams or the ladies that sign the dotted line. Those are patriots. I would say not everyone is
Well,
actually a patriot.
well, see, to me, I would say,
Thank you, God
why
body.
would it make people patriotic? I mean, because if you think about it, again, closer to 9/11, everybody had the yellow stickers on the back of the car darn near. Everybody that was like
Not everyone
27 and
was
old,
joining though.
huh?
Not everyone
No,
was
not.
joining though.
There was an influx in people joining, but not everybody was joining. Excuse me. I would say, I would say, what you said could be split into two halves.
The sniper
Honestly,
returns. Look at her. Here she is.
what you
Oh,
said could
that's
be split
funny.
into two halves.
Continue, brother. Continue.
Sorry, I was reading. Anyway, it can be split into two halves, or either that, or like how far are you saying when you say put your country before yourself? It's like, yeah, when you got onto the sign on the dotted line and some of the examples, yeah, I would agree. But and then as far as like I'm a star because my country needs me to. I'm not doing that, but I still consider myself pretty patriotic.
So, of course, the idea of what the whole, I mean, I'm in the profession where everything has to be defined. So I get the worry, I get the concern, I get the point that was made, right? Um, I guess this is my response to it. Putting your country before yourself. You could take, I mean, again, right? Just like the law, there's a spiritualistic or the purposivism, and there's a textualist approach. Textualist, word for word, what I just said is simple. Do you put your country before yourself? I would even take it literally. Do you jump on the grenade? Do you put your body on the line? Do you put your limbs on the line? Do you put everything that you have on the line for a purpose that is greater than yourself? That's patriotism. Now, does willingness to do that mean patriotism? Of course, right? If you were part of that MOS, if you were part of that field, if you were part of that branch, of course, patriotism. Now, any person who's been in the military knows, well, you know, you need your cups, you need your, yeah. Are they patriots to a lesser degree? Yes. Yes.
We'll get to you in one
But,
second,
and
guys.
this is the but, dot, 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 right? There are moments when people say, "Oh, you were in the military? Oh, cool. Warlord, what's the next question I usually follows? I don't know. What about were you deployed? Usually, right? Did you fight? Why is that the next question that's asked, Warlord? I'll tell you why. It's because even in the eyes of civilians, there's a hierarchy. Oh, you joined the military? That's step one. Oh, that's cool. Well, what was your job? You were in infantry? That's step two. Oh, you were in infantry? Oh, cool. Hey, did you get deployed? That's step three. What does that mean? That means like, oh, you actually did the stuff. You did it. You weren't just wearing the uniform and talking. You weren't just looking pretty and taking pictures and posting it on your social media. You were about that life. That's awesome. Thank you. And then there's the final thank you for your service. However, if you don't answer yes to any of those, they still thank you for your service. But let's be real, there is a hierarchy. And I don't think anyone who's at level 1 or 2 would be like, oh, that's not right. No, it is, man. I never did it. I never was warlord. I never had to be warlord. And because I never had to be warlord, I know warlord's a real patriot. There's a difference. Like, I don't
Okay,
know. I don't think that this is super complicated or complex. If you put yourself before your country, that means you were willing to do what warlord did. It's not hard. Now, of course, if you want to get political, yeah, the reds and the blues define it differently, cool. But no matter what side of the aisle you're on, if you join the military, at least to a bare minimum, that is patriotic. That is level one, man. Like, unlike the
no,
law, this is not complex. It's really not. So I would just
but
argue
when it
that literally, you just by joining, you are a patriot or at least patriotic to a certain degree. And depending on your willingness to take it a step further, makes you more patriotic. Like,
yeah, but you can say to a degree everybody. You gotta think about it
no,
when you got
no.
there's people that willingly join, and they can't stand nothing about the military, nothing about the country. They complain the whole time, things like that. And then also when you get to things like the grenade, if you see the grenade there, you're not jumping on it for your country. You're jumping on it for the people to the left and right of you, though.
Why are they there though?
Some of them are there for because they want to be there because they're patriots. Some of them are there because it's a job. There was a
And
lot of
their
people.
job was motivated by the need to do what?
Some
Like,
of
it
them just get
boils
a
down
job.
to that.
You know that you served with those people. I joined just to get a job. I ended up here.
Yeah,
You
but
know
there's
that.
a difference between, in my mind, my pushback is this, bro, you're right. There are people, shoot, I mean, let's keep it a buck, man. Did I join because I loved America? Or did I join because I thought this was the best decision for me at the time? I'm not going to lie. I'm not Captain America. I'm not Steve Rogers. I just joined because at that point in my life, I thought that was the best decision for me. Does that distinguish me from, Smugatelli who didn't join? No. But at the same time, you served honorably. You did what you were supposed to do. You did everything. You did A, B, C, D. That's patriotic because you took the initial step and you took steps further along. That's the difference. Now, is everyone patriotic? No. Do people believe in the idea of patriotism? I think every American does, right? Every American sees the person. Every American has the idea, the whole aspect of the private who jumps on the grenade, the person who willingly gave himself up for his country. That's in everybody, the absolute. That's common. Now, is everyone willing to do that? No, man. Everyone's not willing to be warlord. Like, everyone's not. So I think that just it shows there is a difference. There are levels.
Whether y'all believe me or not, man, I was infantry because I wanted the experience. I said it all the time, and I'm pretty sure people do not believe me. But I still consider myself patriotic. So, but
Theodore Bremer is hilarious, bro.
yeah, well,
Theodore Bremer is hilarious. He straight up said, "My measurement for a thank you for your services. Have you been under fire? Have people tried to take your life?" That's real, though.
I was gonna
I apologize.
get
D
to
Hill's right. I'm not trying to snap at nobody. I apologize. I'm not trying to snap. It's just for me, it's not that complicated. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just
I'm not sure if you're
again, that's just me, bro. That's just me. That's just me. I don't know.
Oh, how can? Well, so Godbody, are you straight up asking us that, or are you saying it like he knows the answer? Answer.
He
You know what I'm saying? Are
does.
you saying a rhetorical question?
That is rhetorical as hell, bro. Just how can a
Just
man
make
willingly risk death with a family at home if he's not sure the nation will cover him? Godbody's saying it, bro. It's inherently patriotic. Like, it
no,
by
no, no,
definition.
no, or because I mean, well, at least the government will take care of them to a extent.
400K if you die during the line of fire during service.
I think it's more than that now, bro.
Is it now? Or see? I ain't gonna say nothing because at the time 400K was real. You right though. At the time 400K was crazy, but you're right. Yeah, it's probably now more. You're right.
We joined too early.
That's real. That's real. If you tap the heart on the right side, oh yeah, everyone has a different idea what that is.
Let me go find. Okay, it's talking about the questions people had.
Yeah,
Theodore, what is a Navy civilian? You mean
he
you
knows.
work for the?
Hey, you were in the Navy. Now you're a civilian. You got double label.
No. He was in the Navy. He's worked for the Navy. He's worked on Navy bases for
As a Navy civilian. Oh, that is crazy, bro.
Navy
civilians worse than. That's hilarious. I was gonna say something crazy. I didn't want to say it.
I'm not sure what you mean, Theodore.
I don't know, man.
Hammy was sipping.
Snapping.
No, I did not jump on. I know, and I'm letting him know that you was sipping.
That's crazy.
I didn't jump on a grenade.
No, Warlord didn't jump on a grenade. Warlord is he's a hero. If we're gonna be real, no weird simping. He is, man. He knows it. But the problem that I think I'm getting tired of Warlord doing is he minimizes it. I'm getting sick and tired. If I'm being real with you, I am tired of you doing that. That gets old, Warlord. Like seriously, I hate that you minimize it. It's not something that you bro. What you did is ridiculous, man. That does irk the hell out of me that you do that.
No, it's just being honest. That's all it is.
I'm just being honest. I'll slap you. I'm joking. That was a joke. 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 I was just joking. I just got caught up in a moment.
Oh, okay. You read that earlier.
Yeah. I did read that earlier. You're Lieutenant Chief. That's hilarious.
Thank you. The country is a subject.
Oh my gosh. No, it's not. Oh my gosh. Country has a definition. Webster Dictionary. Oh my gosh.
Oh no. You made me think of something. Okay, so back in the days when people would say for king and country. Well, I think some British people. Well, I think it's part of the British military. They have to say for queen and country, right? Don't they? Nowadays, but anyways,
probably.
That's patriotic to me.
That's real.
I don't think we say nothing like that, but we
should
obviously still patriotic.
Yeah, for the red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue. We do the same thing. Red, white, and blue.
Well,
USA.
We say
I do. We do the same thing.
This man said we already got him. We only got one D Hill though.
That's real, and we appreciate you, D Hill. Thank you for your service, D Hill. Thank you for your service.
You know what I heard from somebody, and what I like doing to people is a side note. Just see the confusion on their face or the uncomfortability when people say "thank you for your service," and it's a true statement. I sometimes like to say "thank you for allowing me to serve." And that throws people up.
Shut the hell up! Shut the hell up! Shut up! Shut up! You stupid! Thank you for letting me serve. I appreciate it. Oh my god!
I mean,
Warlord.
You did allow it.
Thank you for letting me serve. You're awesome. You're special. You're something epic. Good Lord.
Oh yes. So like there's different things. God body like the kids get their college. Well, it used to be up till 26. But now I think it's to like what they're going for. Are they going for their bachelors and stuff like that? Obviously they give the family money, and before in the past, that's pretty much what it was. They dropped a check on the family and said, take care. And some people
they dropped the check on the family. They dropped the check on the family. That's what you said.
Am I wrong?
This said they come by making rain and dip. That's crazy. They dropped the check on the family. Is wild. That's wild. You ought to be ashamed.
I mean, it's true though. And I think in World War II, they was even like, you'll eventually get that check. We got a lot of checks to hand out.
Yo, that's real though. I can't imagine that, bro. That's crazy.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
He said they dropped a check on him. Warlord, a wild boy. He said they dropped a check on him. Whew. Word for the Navy at the Paxi. Yeah, packing. No one ever told Warlord. Yeah, Warlord, you probably should tell your story. This is the perfect episode to do that. Your girls know you are their super. Yeah. He really is, though, hemp cereal. He really is. He really is. You play
Well, of
like you
course,
don't
I
know that.
the girls. I love them bundles.
No, you're a
Even
good
the
guy.
annoying chocolate bunny that's on the other side of that door, because I hear her stomping around. We are Marines, God body. We're not soldiers.
Warlord is a Marine. I'm a GI Joe.
You're a Marine too.
Yeah, maybe.
You Josie. Mm-hmm. I made it to the bottom of this. Oh goodness. Go back there. There you go.
Anti-hero?
I
Damn.
tried to girls, but Andre always tells me to do stuff. Matter of fact, side story. We were driving one day down my street. There was a dude tailgating us hard as hell. I don't know why, for whatever reason. I started turning, and he like rode my tail super hard. All I did was stop just to see if he was going to pull into the store parking lot, so I can have a word with him. This man straight up jumped on me, and I saw a dude look up in the rearview mirror, and then he took off a little bit faster. But this man straight up jumped on me, talking about Warlord. No, I'm looking at him like, no
Bro,
way.
you were about to reach for it. You know what you were about to do. You know
No,
what
it's
you were
not.
about to do. I knew what you were
No,
about to do. You slowed down, and it was like one of those movies. It was like Boys in the Hood. I knew what was going to happen. You was going for it. I saw it. It was slow motion. You went like this. Like you
I was
were
trying to
about to
figure
go
out.
for it.
I was trying to figure out what dude's problem was. That's it.
And you were going for it. You were about to go for it.
I wasn't about. No, I was, no.
Warlord, you know what you're about to do. He's about to Swiss cheese him. He's about to hit him with it.
He always be coming at me violent. See, you missed it. I think was the last time that you got off earlier. D Hill came at me violent as fuck. I think I think he said he would slap shit out of me, and then I think he told me to shut the fuck up. I was like, dang, where'd that come from? He's like, I don't know. I just want to stir things up. Like,
That's crazy. Whoever the mod is, ban him. Ban his ass. Ban him right now. Ban him.
Violent.
Need ban him. Mine's in Alabama somewhere. Yeah, I'm glad you did that, DL, because Warlord crazy. He be set tripping, you know what I'm saying? He be twisting his fingers and shit. He crazy.
I ain't messing with D Hill. D Hill that type that be laughing.
You call him Hill D?
Everything's a joke to him. That man, I know. I think he's undercover violent. I ain't messing with him. And he got money too.
Hemp C wants you to tell your story, Warlord.
I have told my story. I've told it the morning that Hemp C said, "Why don't you tell your story?" I've told it a few episodes back because Gloss never heard it.
Bro,
Basically.
read Theodore Bremer's comment.
Where?
That's crazy that he put that.
Oh heck no.
Bro, do you read it now?
Yes, I saw it. So I said he's retarded.
That's crazy. He wrote that.
And honestly, God body is like almost with each individual like that you see with the signs on the side of the road. You almost got to get into where the story is, because a lot of times it is they let people slip through the cracks for whatever reason. They don't let them know the benefits they have, things like that, the VA, things like that. Other times people are lying, and then other times it's on the person. They just kind of want everything handed to them. They didn't want to go make those appointments and stuff themselves. Like Andre can tell you, is like dealing with the VA can be annoying, but it's like you're not going to get anywhere unless you push them to do what they need to do.
That's very true. That's very, very true.
It's not going to be a fight, but sometimes it is.
Yeah. All right, Brody.
I guess.
On that note, I appreciate you. This is always fun, man. I'm glad that I'm sorry that I had to take a little bit. I know I was a couple minutes late, so thank you for waiting. And this was fun, man. Thank you. Don't stop.
Man, bouncing
I'm
out.
joking. Huh?
That's it. I said, this man always bouncing out. D Hill,
It's an hour.
you know
What you talking about?
that you're a mob boss.
I'm a my boss. That's not true.
Give me an hour 30. What? Or don't. You ain't at home.
Beep. No.
He'll say
That's slow motion. D Hill said he put Warlord in a headlock and bite his earlobe.
I gotta finish reading God before I put up
Earlobe
this.
bites disrespectful.
Right.
That's wild. That
I love you. I forever got to read all of Godbody's entire comments before I click on them from now on.
That's true. That's true. Godbody's crazy. He's funny though. He is funny.
See, if I stick a gun to anyone's head or a water gun, it would be this guy.
Thank you. Good Lord, man. Yo, why is Theodore crazy like that? Did you read his last comment?
Yeah, that's why I said I always end up sticking a water gun to his head or punching him in his stomach.
Well, Dio, I appreciate that last comment, bro. Thank you for that. And yeah, Theodore is wild, bro. We gotta Theodore's got to be on timeout, bro. He's wild.
Theodore need to put down that booger sugar. He's not repping his people the right way.
Oh,
Theodore, since
what do you
you're
think?
talking anyway, do you feel closer to America or Jamaica, or is it in between with you? Yes.
I didn't know he was Jamaican.
I don't know where y'all got Indian from.
I was about to say I thought Indian because someone put it in the comments.
Eastern Indian, maybe.
Pirate.
What?
All right, Brody. I'm tired. I'm gonna call the wife and I'm gonna get out.
Get out of here, man. Theodore, answer my question.
Later, Brody.
Peace. I hope you don't trip down those steps. Bust your tooth. Dang, why are all y'all closing on my show before I was even closing it out? Oh, there we go. No, I'm saying though, I know that you're proud to be a American. What do you feel closer to, America or Jamaica? I mean, you got a lisp, but you still got a pretty strong accent. Come on, Theodore. I kind of did what I was going to say in closing at the beginning anyways. So I'm going to need Theodore to answer. Oh, also, is there or is there not supposed to be a debate tonight? Oh, they do debate tonight. I might sit here and stare at you guys while the debate is on. I'm excited for this one. You said my family are females. I don't know if it's blanking out my picture or not, but I'm just trying to find the debate. And I spelled that wrong. I might sit here and just stare at the screen while the debate's on. Okay, and then I don't remember how I did it last time. And I also lost StreamYards. Yeah, what the heck? Where did StreamYards go? Give me 1 second. I apologize. Oh, here it is. All right. Presets. Settings. Initial background. Hotkey layout. Guess. I think it was. And then bruh. Share screen, blah 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 blah. There we go.
Had these two deciding votes that ultimately led to this record or near record inflation. We have these issues. This isn't for football.
Yeah. By the way, the former president was talking about his debating skills. He said when he's going up against a moron, a total moron. So that was the issue. Anyway, Jason Miller, thank you so much. We'll see you later. Appreciate it. During the Harris campaign. So, Peter, what are they signaling about?
Question is, we've been those people close to Tim Walz. Among the things I've heard, his priorities this evening will be to help amplify the case on behalf of Kamala Harris. This is as much about Kamala Harris in the eyes of Tim Walz as it will be about Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, according to those campaign. Notably, this is the first time these two will ever be in person. J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. It does have the potential for some fireworks. They've been sniping, as we've witnessed, for months, but mostly from a distance. Now, for the first time, they get to do it in that traditional running mate role as the attack dog. And one key voter group that I'm told both campaigns have been targeting, and with Walz at the forefront of that fight. Walz, of course, the former high school football coach. He's a hunter, a plain-spoken Midwestern dad. Vance, who would be the youngest VP to serve in decades. He's really tried to frame his messaging toward younger guys. It's a place to watch. And as you watch tonight, recognize most Americans who haven't made their mind up yet, and that is a limited sliver of the American electorate right now. They're not watching tonight. The campaigns recognize that it's the soundbite, the simple sound bites that may break through how this is cut up and pieced together and how it gets out to those limited number of undecided voters. To the Harris campaign, a lot of them are younger, particularly younger men, a racially diverse group. It's why they've been advertising on college football, among others, to target their messaging in the.
We're going to talk to Senator Mark Kelly in just a moment. Let's lift the veil off the expectation setting that goes on with the campaigns, because it just makes me laugh. You know, we just had Jason Miller who's like, oh, Tim Walz is such a great debater, and then all these Democrats around the press saying Tim Walz, he's not sure. J.D. Vance is this it's like reverse complimenting thing, so that when whatever happens, they can be like, well, we set those expectations and exceeded them.
By the way, a time-honored tradition.
It
for
is.
debate
Lower
prep
the
in
expectations.
decades past, right? I mean, this is what we always see. I actually spoke with the person who played Governor Walz in the prep for Senator J.D. Vance, Congressman Tom Emmer, and he did much of the same thing. This is strategic on the part of the campaigns. Why? Partly to let the audience know this is kind of what they can expect. Here's the reality. This is not their first rodeo. It is on a stage like this, but both of these candidates have done debates in the past. They've done debates for their races for Congress, for governor, for senator.
They practice. They're smart.
Exactly.
They're pros. And look, if you talk to allies, both of these campaigns, they say, here's the challenge for each of them. For Governor Walz, one ally said a good night for him is if he can keep all of those comments that on Donald Trump, all of the criticism of him in the spotlight. That's what allies want to see from him. In terms of J.D. Vance, and you were just talking to Jason Miller about this, Savannah and Lester, the comments like the cat lady comments, they want him to stay away from controversial comments. Yes, throw a counterpunch, get into the mix, but they do not want him to reiterate some of those controversies that have been front and center that they feel take away from top issues like the economy, like immigration.
All right, for more on what to expect from the Harris-Walz campaign, let's bring in Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. He's appearing with us tonight as a campaign surrogate. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. Where you hear some of the talk about the expectation game. What is the expectation tonight?
Well, I think it's about contrast. You know, in the case of Governor Walz and Kamala Harris, you've got two people that want to lead this country into the future, that have a vision, that want to bring down costs for healthcare and prescription drugs and childcare and so many other things that affect American families. And on the other hand, you have Donald Trump and his Project 2025. It's going to increase costs, $4,000 out-of-pocket costs for American families. And if you're a senior who has benefited from the prescription drug benefit that we put into place with Kamala Harris and the administration, that would go away. So I would expect that we will see the contrast between what each side is offering.
Will Walz go after former President Trump's record or J.D. Vance's record?
Well, I think what you got to understand about JD is he's a Yale-trained, mouthpiece for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is, what matters here. He's a convicted felon. Kamala Harris is an experienced prosecutor, an attorney general, senator, and a vice president who really cares about the American people and cares about families. What I've seen from Donald Trump is, he people in two categories. You're either the con man or the person being conned, and he offers very little for middle class, working class families and everyday Americans.
Senator, you're from the great state of Arizona, of course, my home state. If you can tell, I'm biased toward it. Arizona, of course, was decisive.
Tucson.
Yes, Tucson, Arizona. It was decisive 4 years ago, and yet Kamala Harris seems to be losing ground there. Tim Walz has progressive record on immigration. He's in Minnesota, gave undocumented migrants made them eligible for free college tuition, state health insurance. Not going to play in Arizona.
Well, Savannah, Tim Walz, when he was a member of Congress, was ranked the 7th most bipartisan House member. He served with Gabby. They were freshmen together. I've known the governor, well, and during his service, he's got the experience for this job. And Kamala Harris is ready to go here on day one. And, she wants to take this country into the future where Donald Trump just wants to drag us back into the past and offer more tax cuts for billionaires, shred our alliances, and take away health care rights from women. That's what people should remember about the first Trump presidency.
But is immigration a vulnerability in Arizona? I guess just to put a fine point on it, are these some of these immigration stances a problem in the state of Arizona, which was decisive last time around?
I was at the border with the vice president on Friday, and we met with sheriff and some mayors, county supervisors, the Border Patrol, and Customs and Border Protection, and talked about these issues. You got to remember, Kamala Harris was a prosecutor and attorney general and senator of a border state. She understands the border very well. And what Donald Trump did on the border, I mean, the last thing he did that had a huge impact is he told Republican senators that they could not vote for the bipartisan border security deal that we negotiated with the White House and with Senate Republicans. And what that did is, I mean, what it would have done if we could pass it, and we were about to pass it, was it was going to increase Border Patrol pay. We're going to hire more Border Patrol agents, more infrastructure, more fentanyl detection machines. Donald Trump stopped that. Kamala Harris has said that on day one, if we can send her that legislation, and I think we can after Donald Trump loses this election, if we send her that legislation, she'll sign it into law. She's the one who really cares about solving this problem, and will work to try to solve it. Donald Trump just wants to talk about it, Savannah. And, you know, he often just goes down there to get a picture. I had a very effective visit with her on Friday. It went very well. She's ready to deal with this issue.
Senator Mark Kelly, we've got to leave it there. We've got lots to get to. Thank you for your time.
We'll take a break. Coming up, we're counting down to the first and only vice presidential debate where the two VP candidates will introduce themselves to the country in many ways. We'll have a closer look at who they are and what they bring to the table right after this.
Imagine Warlock, Hell Knight, and Archdemon in one stack. And I think that means there are only two heroes.
Think you're tough?
Who let you speak? You know who I am? 97 Hero Power, VIP. What?
Dios mío!
How did you do this?
Most players miss this hidden secret on the first level. Take out the Goblin Fisherman and snatch his lucky harpoon. With this underrated tool, you can catch the Golden Octopus and obtain the Divine Armor set. This armor boosts your level high enough to take down the boss in a single blow. Grab all the loot and don't forget to secure Tank Julius. Spend all your resources to upgrade your demonic skin with infinite stamina. With it, you'll easily complete the main campaign and watch your hero power skyrocket to 284. Load it now and get the Eternal Astaroth for free.
Want to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Sprizzy makes it simple. In just 3 steps, you can reach millions. Step 1, select your video. Step 2, define your audience with keywords and interests. Step 3, launch your campaign. Target viewers by location, age, and interests to ensure your videos reach the right audience. Watch your engagement soar with real interested viewers discovering your content. Join over 1.5 million channels that have grown with Sprizzy. Get started today at Sprizzy.com.
It's not echoing music.
It's as American as apple pie. It's iconic. It's as American as you. This November, step into the box and make it stick. Vote her up.
News lives in the now.
Look at this. You can't even see anything anymore.
Let's break down what we know.
You gotta see it.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
First and only vice presidential debate this election cycle between former President Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, and Vice President Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz.
We're going to show you the debate live once it starts in a few moments. But first, a closer look at the candidates. So let's go back to Peter Alexander, who with more on who Tim Walz is and how he could help Vice President Harris. Hi, Peter.
Savannah, good morning, or good evening, right? Is what time of day is it?
Old habits,
It's
yeah.
the first time that Vance and Walz will have debated in 2 years since they ran for their current positions. Neither of them has faced a moment like this, of course, with millions expected to be watching. Walz has spoken about a desire, though, to debate Vance since Kamala Harris first announced him as his running mate. As a plain-spoken Midwesterner, Tim Walz is known for not pulling any punches.
This is not about the Second Amendment. This is about the safety of our children and our communities.
A self-described white dude for Kamala Harris, the Democratic governor is running alongside the nation's first woman of color atop a major party's ticket. Walz grew up in small-town Nebraska, joining the National Guard as a teenager, using the GI Bill to pay tuition. He'd serve in the Guard for more than 2 decades, becoming a school teacher and high school football coach. He volunteered for John Kerry's presidential campaign in 2004. In 2006, launching his own long-shot bid for Congress, ousting a Republican incumbent. Walz served in Washington for the next 12 years, establishing himself as a moderate Democrat. Then in 2018, he ran for governor, winning in a landslide, though some of his progressive policies would draw Republican criticism. He's tried to dismiss.
What a monster. Kids are eating and having full bellies so they can go learn.
2020 would bring defining moments. The COVID pandemic and the killing of George Floyd that triggered riots and sharp attacks from Republicans for why it took Walz 3 days to call the National Guard.
Is what it is, and I simply believe that we tried to do the best we can.
Walz's critics also point to a state audit report that found major failures by Minnesota's education department during the pandemic, allowing rampant misuse of a federal program meant to feed children.
I think, again, context matters. It was a challenging time for everybody.
Selected by Harris in part for his chemistry with her and his working class roots, Walz regularly touts his connections to the labor community.
I had an opponent who thought this was a real zinger when we were going at it. He said, Governor Walz is in the pocket of organized labor. And I said, that is a damn lie. I am the pocket.
Walz has grown into his role as an attack dog, not shy about going after former President Trump or his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance.
You guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something.
This summer's Democratic convention, Walz's 17-year-old son Gus, sitting alongside his mother Gwen and sister Hope, went viral for this emotional moment, reacting to his father's acceptance speech.
It was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him.
But for his part, Walz has had to defend some of his public comments.
Those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
Facing accusations, he inflated his military record and retired from the Army National Guard to avoid service in Iraq. Walz says he's proud of his service. Now, the 60-year-old governor from the middle of America is set to make the case why he and Harris should serve in the White House for the next 4 years. And in my reporting ahead of tonight, I'll tell you one of the most interesting things that I learned from those people close to Tim Walz. They say one of their concerns privately is that he can have a tendency to be a bit heated and defensive tonight. So, Savannah and Lester, it's going to be interesting to watch this conversation between the two men. No audience in the room. Preparing Walz in case Vance tries to get under his skin. How does he handle it this evening on that stage?
We'll be watching for it, Peter. Thank you. Let's bring back Garrett Hake now for more on who J.D. Vance is and what he brings to the
That's about it.
Lester, J.D. Vance has already introduced himself to the once as the author of a best-selling memoir, but now this self-described hillbilly has to reintroduce himself to the country again as someone who can make the case that he's ready to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. He is the junior senator from Ohio with only 2 years in government. But J.D. Vance is one of former President Trump's biggest defenders.
I want to help Donald Trump get elected because it's really important that he become the next president.
In the Senate,
how can we defend Ukraine's borders when we're not even defending our own American border?
And on the campaign trail,
the question is, fighters to Washington, D.C.
He's one of the leading voices of the America First movement, not holding back in pushing the former president's agenda.
Republicans, we need to govern like we won the majority the American people gave us, not like a bunch of cowards. Let's get to work in Washington, D.C. No more talk. It's time for action.
But that hasn't always been the case. This was Vance in 2016.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
He was deeply critical of Trump then, going so far as to liken him to America's Hitler. But this was Vance just 6 years later.
The president is right. I wasn't always nice, but the simple fact is he's the best president of my lifetime, and he revealed the corruption in this country like nobody else.
Running for Senate in 2022 in Ohio as a pro-Trump candidate.
I was wrong about Donald Trump. I didn't think he was going to be a good president, Brett. He was a great president.
Vance shot to fame is the author of Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir about his upbringing in a poor, hard-hit part of Ohio. Enlisted in the Marines, attended Yale Law School, worked in venture capital, and then on to the Senate, his first role in government. On the major issues, Vance has said in the past he would support a national ban on abortion after 15 weeks, but supports exceptions, including for rape and the life of the mother. On immigration, Vance has called for finishing Trump's southern border wall. He has come under criticism for a 2021 interview with Tucker Carlson, where he said the U.S. is being run by
a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
And on the issue of the 2020 presidential election, then Senate candidate Vance suggested he would have supported fraudulent slates of pro-Trump electors.
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there.
In recent weeks, Vance's false claims about Haitian immigrants eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, set off a firestorm, which he later suggested was by design.
If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do.
Now, the father of two, just 40 years old, after not even a few years in government, is set to step onto the debate stage to make the case why he and Donald Trump should be the next leaders of the United States. One important note about J.D. Vance is the close friendship he developed with Donald Trump Jr. Vance getting picked for this ticket. The two of them see themselves as shaping the future of a Republican Party even after Donald Trump Sr. is on the stage. Guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Garrett. We want to turn now to President Biden's former White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, and Donald Trump's former deputy White House secretary, Hogan Gidley. Good afternoon. Good evening to all of you. It's this close to a good morning. Peter started it. Hogan, let's talk about, we're talking about J.D. Vance. Yeah. Some of these likability issues. Is this something you think he should take on tonight, whether it's the childless cat lady or some of these other kinds of comments?
I think it'll solve itself just naturally. I think it gives him a chance to introduce himself to the American people. You heard one of Trump's surrogates earlier talk about his tough upbringing, where he had a mom who was an addict. She wasn't around. He was raised by his grandmother, obviously going into the military, putting himself, getting to college rather, with scholarship money, that type of thing. Kind of shows you his ability to relate to people out there who are facing struggles in their daily lives. What's interesting, though, is in this particular debate, J.D. Vance has an opportunity here to really kind of expose, I think, Governor Walz, because he hasn't really answered any questions. He had one debate where he was like an emotional support animal for Kamala, and he had one question about his lying about his military service, and he said, I don't really speak English well, so that's part of the problem. But he was a governor, and so he's a record. He's going to have to answer why he wants tax dollars to pay for illegal aliens to get free health care and free college tuition, why he locked down his state and then had National Guard troops fire paintballs at citizens on their front porch. Those are serious issues he's never had to answer.
Well,
I think JD's going to bring that up.
Because as Jason Miller, the Trump campaign staffer, said, there's an article that says they bubble wrapped Tim Walz. And look, I mean, Axios, an independent news organization, did an analysis and found that Vance alone has done more than 7 times as many interviews as Harris and Walz.
True. And also when Vance does this, he often attacks the press. But putting that aside, Tim Walz
is there.
No, I agree with you. Tim Walz propelled himself onto this ticket because he was so appealing on television and because he was so relatable and likable. He should be out there more. And I think it's crazy that he's not out there more. And it is true that it also means that it puts more pressure on this night. He's going to have to answer tough questions. So will J.D. Vance.
Sure.
I do think immigration, you were talking about this earlier with the senator from Arizona, is a hard one for the Walz for the Harris-Walz team, because it is the issue where they are most underwater with voters. That's why Harris went to the border, and there is some work to be done.
Let me ask both of you, nothing seems to move this race. We're still looking at roughly 50-50. So might the goal for both tonight to be do no harm at this point?
I think the first rule of a vice presidential pick is to do no harm. And that's not just for the pick itself, but in a debate, for example. As we were talking about, though, I think a lot of these camps are already entrenched. A lot of folks are going to vote for Trump no matter what. A lot of folks are going to vote for Kamala no matter what. I think there could be an outside force that really tips the scales here. We just had a hurricane. People are suffering in a state like North Carolina and Georgia, both swing states. A lot of people are suffering, don't get me wrong, but those states matter in this upcoming election. There's now a war, full scale, between Israel and Iran. That's an issue I think the Americans will care about, and a strike that's going to impact a lot of Americans.
But those issues, they don't move the voters on their own. It's how does the ticket deal with those issues. So I think if you're Walz tonight, you have all these backdrop of these challenging issues you just mentioned. It's reminding people about leadership and why stability and sanity in the Situation Room and in the Oval Office actually matters.
And that
remember, Trump's national security team, many of them don't even want him to be the commander in chief.
And
so that's a challenge.
Of course it is. But as president, we didn't have wars breaking out all over the world. We didn't have illegal immigrants coming into our American communities, raping and killing people. And those types of things absolutely should be a reminder to the American people that leadership does matter. And we didn't have these problems when Donald Trump was in the White House.
You can take this debate to NBC News now and continue to the green room. Real quick, show of hands. Who thinks there will be another debate between Trump and Harris? Wow.
No.
Who thinks there should be? We'll leave it on this point of agreement. Hogan, Jen, thank you very much. We're going to take a break right here, and still ahead tonight, how the vice presidential debate could shake up the polls with Election Day just 35 days away. Our man Steve Kornacki over at the big board to break it all down. Coming up next.
Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
This time, we have the power to determine who controls the Senate, to determine our future.
Costs way too much.
Kristen Welker hosts Meet the Press every Sunday on NBC.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the first and only vice presidential debate for Election Day.
Tonight's debate is potentially the last debate voters will see before the general election. It could change voters' minds in the key battleground states.
So we've got Steve Kornacki over at his post to break down where the race stands right now. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Savannah and Lester. Take a look here. The national poll average first. All the major national polls, we keep a running average. And right now, Kamala Harris at 3%, 3-point lead in the poll average nationally for Kamala Harris right now. Raises the question, this is the third straight election that Donald Trump has been the Republican nominee. How did the race look at this exact same point the last two times? We'll take a look here. 4 years ago on this date in the poll average, Joe Biden 9 points over Donald Trump. Donald Trump 8 years ago at this point, Hillary had a lead. Does that three look familiar? The exact same point lead that Kamala Harris has in the poll average now. And of course, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote in 2016, but she lost to Trump where it matters in the electoral college in those states. So what do the swing states look like right now? We've been talking about this core group of 7 battlegrounds. And again, what you're seeing here is our current average of all the polls in those states. And the headline here obviously is extremely close. Look, the widest margin you're going to see here is 3 points for Harris in Michigan and in Nevada. Look at North Carolina. You see Harris there leading. I say leading. It's 1/10 of 1 point average right now. One thing to keep in mind, we saw big polling misses in the Midwest states in 2016 and 2020. Both elections, they underestimated. The polls did Trump's actual support. Keep that in mind. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, as we see numbers there this fall. Has that problem been solved? Does it persist? And just for the sake of showing you the state of play right now, this is not a prediction, but if it were to break exactly like this on Election Day, these states were to go exactly as they look right now, let me show you what it would do to the electoral map. So you see we have the battlegrounds in gray. If we fill them in based on the current polling average, this is what you would get. That would give Harris 292. That would be enough for the presidency. But remember, we just showed you North Carolina 1/10 of 1 point. Just by getting that, if Trump could get that, he'd be at 262. He'd be one Midwest state away from the presidency. So that's how close it is when you start to look at those battleground averages right now. Now, in terms of tonight, possible implications for the vote in November, let's take a look at the image of each one of these candidates coming to the stage tonight. Favorable, unfavorable. This is our most recent poll. Tim Walz, 40% positive, 33 negative. He is 7 points above water. J.D. Vance, on the other hand, 32 favorable, 45 unfavorable, 13 points underwater. And perspective on that, if you went back 10 presidential elections, takes us all the way back to 1988. Only one major party vice presidential nominee has been further underwater than J.D. Vance is right now. That was Dan Quayle in 1992 when he was running for re-election with Bush Sr. And of course, that ticket did go on to lose.
All right, Steve, thank you so much.
Kate Snow is talking to a group of voters in the city of Pittsburgh in the critical Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Kate?
Like I'm yelling.
Yeah, it is critical, isn't it? Thank you, Lester. I've got 6 voters here with me. All of you described yourselves as somewhat moderate, somewhat in the center, some more than others. I want to start with Rona and Mary. We've had a lot of news today about Israel and about the attack by Iran. Both of you said you are motivated. You're Jewish, you're Democrats, both of you registered Democrats, but you're seeing this very differently. Rona, tell me why you're thinking about possibly voting for Donald Trump.
Well, today is not a good day to ask me that, I guess, because today, I mean, I'm really thankful, right? Largest barrage of ballistic missiles ever shot at a country in history. And the U.S. supported Israel and shot down missiles along with Jordan and Israel. And so I'm so incredibly thankful for that. And a big Biden fan today.
Are you still thinking you might vote Republican?
I am still undecided. Yes, absolutely. Because I think every day right now is so utterly critical, and watching how this continues to unfold.
And what about you, Meryl?
And for me, today just verified what I've already felt, that the Biden-Harris administration has been very pro-Israel. Today was really an existential threat for the state of Israel once again. And the United States and the Biden administration, along with Vice President Harris, really stepped up. And I was
definitely voting Harris going into tonight's debate. Yes. Let me turn to Claire and Brian. Both of you voted for Trump in 2016, then went away from Trump in 2020, and now you're both considering former President Trump again, even though I think you said you don't really like J.D. Vance very much.
Yeah, I really don't like either of them very much. You know,
admitted somebody had a hidden camera.
I'm looking at something different. I want something different. I'm not really sure where we're going to end up.
I mean, they didn't really have anything.
So maybe tonight you hear something
So
that pushes you.
Maybe if tonight I hear something, I'm you know, it might make up my mind. You know, I'm still kind of up in the air, but.
Claire, you said to me that you're a little worried if you vote for Trump, you wouldn't be able to, you'd have to lie to your friends.
I mean, I think it's hard to vote for anyone. You know, the keyboard killers, no matter which way. I mean, you vote, you know, in this town democratically, and someone's like, well, you voted for this mayor, and then you see something federally, and they say, well, you voted for that president, no matter which side you're on.
Brandon, you said that your community,
Is that better? Can you hear
which
me
I think
better?
is a predominantly Black community, is more divided right now, more at odds than you've seen it in an election.
So it seems like there is no middle ground. Everything is radicalized. Everything is extreme, kind of like what she was saying. But more so for my community, being young and African American, it seems like a lot of people are coming to the topic of politics late, and they're missing nuance. So what we're hearing right now is stirring a passion that's bringing them one way or another.
And John, real quick, one word. What do you need to hear tonight?
I guess it's just seeing that Walt is going to support Kamala Harris. I'm pretty much decided
on Harris.
J.D. Vance and Trump are a danger to our democracy.
Thank you all so much. I'll send it back to you guys, Lester.
All right, Kate, thanks very much. We'll take a break. Next, we're just minutes away from tonight's vice presidential debate. We'll show it to you live after this.
Struggling to create stunning AI images? Meet OpenArt. Here, you can turn sketches
Again, bro, you know, that's some that will be the one part. Come on, man, come on. You invest.
News lives in the now.
The front lines are still very active. This is like quicksand, and officials say an entire town is cut off.
This close to actually understand why people had to.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
Welcome back to our special coverage of tonight's vice presidential debate.
We're about 7 minutes away now. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance facing off against Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Might be the last debate voters see at all before Election Day.
Let's go back to Tom Yamas in the spin room. It's going to be crowded there tonight, if not already.
Oh, yeah, you guys, you know that is true. You know, these spin rooms are where the candidates come with their surrogates right after the debate to argue they won the debate. I want to show you a live camera right now of this spin room because it's unlike any we've seen before because of its size. It's only about 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. It's going to be filled with reporters and surrogates. There's going to be a crush of people here after the debate, including at least one of the candidates who is debating tonight. So this could be chaotic. It could be exciting. It could be fun. It could be wild. We'll have no idea until after the debate. I will tell you this much. It reminds me of my younger days when you go to house parties here in Manhattan inside studio apartments and there was way more people than there was room. Nonetheless, it'll be memorable, and we're going to look for all that excitement right after the debate.
Well, we've learned a lot about you, Tom.
There was more to that story.
All right, let's go to senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. We're going to get to the bottom of that one. Also,
I was asking D. Hill, does he invest in the stock market? Oh, she got a jacked up mouth. You know, as I was asking D. Hill, does he invest in the stock market? Since he's the biggest businessman out of all of us, I think.
Nerves before all of this. Now they're saying he's energized and he's ready. Among the top goals for Governor Walz is to be able to talk about Kamala Harris and what she could bring to the country, and to try to tie J.D. Vance to the Project 2025 agenda that former President Trump tries to distance himself from as much as possible. They also expect that Vance will try to get under the skin of Governor Walz, and he's going to try to focus on reaching voters who have not yet made up their minds. And they also that Governor Walz will have to answer for some of the things that have a frequent target of J.D. Vance, like questions about his military record, and a time when Governor Walz said that he had been in combat when he was in a foreign country working on behalf of the Afghanistan operation, but not in Afghanistan. So they expect that he'll have to answer for that. And what they have prepared is in some ways to talk about his 24 years in the National Guard and saying that is longer than anything that J.D. Vance has done in his professional life, and that they think that is not an argument that Vance can win. So tone-wise, you're going to see Governor Walz trying to be that affable coach, teacher, dad, and to try to relate.
I got you, D. Hill.
Have noted, Savannah.
All right, Kelly, thank you.
Let's bring back Garrett Hake in the spin room. He's covering the Trump-Vance campaign. What are your thoughts here as we head down to the final minutes?
At the end of the day, Lester, this is still all about the people at the top of the ticket. That's something that wasn't lost today in Trump world. Donald Trump did something unusual today. He held not one, but two campaign events of his own on the day of his VP debate, both of them in Wisconsin, mentioning J.D. Vance just one time during those two events in response to a question. So for Donald Trump, this is still about Trump versus Harris, and I think that'll be something that's forefront on the mind of J.D. Vance when he takes the stage tonight as well.
All
Lester?
right. Thank you, Garrett. Let's bring back Kristen Welker, Hallie Jackson, and Peter Alexander has joined the conversation. Peter, I mean, based on everything we've talked about in the last hour, it seems like, in a way, Tim Walz, the work for him is on substance. What does he stand for? Defending past positions as governor of Minnesota. And for J.D. Vance, it's about style. It's about likability, about some of the controversial things he said. That seems like where the work is.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. We've made a lot of these points to this point. One other point that I would add to this conversation is, remember how this whole campaign started, where age was the big issue? Joe Biden was going to be 86 at the end of a second term. Right now, Donald Trump is 78 years old. His age means there's a little bit unique attention being focused on J.D. Vance right now. He's 40. You're going to see Tim Walz, who is 60 years old today. The last time there was a big age discrepancy like this, 1988, Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle, who was 41, a year older, of course, then J.D. Vance is when he's up there on stage.
And Vance has been senator for 2 years.
And the gist is that was one of the rare moments where a line broke through. You know, I knew John F. Kennedy, you're no John F. Kennedy. These moments rarely break through. Is there a viral moment like that that sort of defines this night, or is it a wash?
Just this question with 3 minutes to go. Do these debates matter? Does a vice presidential debate matter in the big picture?
They can matter. Think about back in 2012 when
Joe Biden had a very strong debate performance against Paul Ryan and really helped to reset the campaign after former President Obama stumbled in his first debate against Mitt Romney. So yes, they can matter. Again, I think this takes on outsized meaning because of the fact that there's no second presidential debate. One more point, in listening to those voters that Kate was talking to, all of them seem so frustrated with the process. And you think about that word change. Right now, Vice President Kamala Harris wins on the change argument by 9 points. I think that's part of the work that J.D. Vance is going to try to do.
Well, change is interesting because she's an incumbent, but so is former President Trump.
That's right.
So it's interesting to see that. I mean, people say, they like to say, conventional wisdom, these vice presidential debates don't matter. And maybe they didn't when elections weren't decided by 10,000 voters
that's
in a
exactly
Midwest
right.
state.
In two different states, and that's it.
Yes.
I come back to something that you have said from the jump, Savannah, through this election cycle, which is let's have a little bit of humility here, right? It's hard for us to predict, especially with the race this close, especially with the dynamic of no next debate for the presidential candidates. Remember what this race is going to come down to. Those 6 critical battlegrounds, the economy and immigration. We have seen that consistently in the polling. Expect to hear both of those issues hammered big time on stage tonight.
And worth noting also, this is the first presidential election since Roe was overturned. I think that's going to be an X factor too.
Mics will be on tonight. It's going to make a huge difference in terms of expectations based on what we saw in the presidential debate.
Remember, it was the Harris campaign that in the presidential debate wanted the mics to be on throughout here. This time they are on throughout. CBS can turn them off as necessary, but it's that back and forth. They're hoping that you can hear those snide comments perhaps by either side.
Show of hands, who thinks there will be another debate between Trump and Harris?
Listen to you with this show of hands.
Show of hands. It's a quick poll. Okay.
I think
who thinks there should be?
We're journalists. We think there should be.
Okay. All right. There we go.
Good answer. Well, it is the top of the hour now, 9 p.m. here in New York City. We are just seconds away from tonight's only vice presidential debate between Ohio Republican Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Democratic Governor Tim Walz.
That's right. It is also potentially, if you haven't noticed, possibly the last debate we will see before Election Day. Election Day now just 35 days away, 5 weeks.
We have kind of set the table here on what people will be looking at and what we'll all be talking about in a little while. We will have in-depth analysis once the debate concludes here on NBC. But tonight's event is hosted by CBS News in their studio in New York, just a few blocks from here.
Yeah, and as the last debate was between the running mates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, there's no audience in there tonight. So each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for their answers, and then there's a rebuttal. And the moderators have said, Lester, there will be some fact-checking, but they're really counting on the candidates to fact-check each other.
And as we noted, unlike the last debate, microphones will not be muted, but the network says they reserve the right to mute the candidates. So that'll be an interesting process as they go along.
Okay, the vice presidential debate about to be on. Let's go to CBS Network Studios here in the heart of Manhattan and watch this debate.
Presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make their points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene, and now a labor strike. 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora.
Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will be committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies and, God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump, who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible. And then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to all of the governors and the emergency responders on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse
your
by the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him, he's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in the country, and we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think, lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing that's affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys weren't
economy,
going to fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to
One
have,
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put there is one is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing the to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? 2 minutes.
I hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening. Heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border, and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now, not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources giving take-home pay to middle-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one, whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year, and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs IRA.
May I respond?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. To common sense economic principles.
A conversation on healthcare then.
Senator,
please.
Thank you.
A lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on. Proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used GI to become a teacher, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, I came back home and started a program to young people there. We would take basketball, we would take baseball, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. That was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most partisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot, I will get caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out some messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're not probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up.
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda's with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not what, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options.
And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance, had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
Well, I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro freedoms for women to make their choices. And we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit. But we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong
That
about?
is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting against, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Wix gives you.
I was about to say, are they even ever going to have a commercial to where I can chime in? Oh, why am I still typing when I can talk right now? Duh. I don't even remember what countries I was thinking about, neither, D Hill. One of my homeboys and I, we was talking about it. I think he pretty much goes out there and visits regularly. I think he might have a Mabu thing out there. Now that he's gonna sit with 120 new sexual assault allegations. Goodness, boy. See, people keep saying they think he's gonna be Epstein, but I don't think that's gonna happen. That would be too obvious. Yeah, D Hill. I keep on always hearing about there's all these just abandoned mansions out there that's going for like, I won't say nothing for us, but you know, we could easily, a lot more easily attainable for us here. It's just that I wonder how things would be like in like Mexico. You can go buy land, own land, but depending on where you live, especially if you're a dual citizen, American dual citizen, it's actually more just because you're American dual citizen. Or what, you can't buy property on the beach if you're not a Mexican citizen. There was some nice spots actually. Speaking of that, there was some nice spots around the Amazon too. D Hill and God Body. Of course, you know, like you would have to have some money, have like, you know, if you want to go buy civilization stuff, I'll definitely build up a wall around that. I would definitely have a decent security system. I mean, the locals ain't gonna mess with you, the indigenous people, but other people, if they learn that you're out there, and then I'll probably have like a personal little mini helicopter and pilot to fly me into civilization every now and then. They might be coming back on. Let me unmute it.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary murder and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal our country is today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the school? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that you're doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40%, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens. Host of other goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where are you going to seize lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump did is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be rents who are competing, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not
migrants
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's again blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask though on this question, are we going to build houses in the same federal land? And when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national lands. Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But this is when you view things as commodities. There's a money here. Let's take federal land and let's look people for that. I think there's ways. Seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up, but Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media. Of migration, especially illegal immigration and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we're a country of builders. We're a country have a administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing anything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that is housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon people who have no legal right to.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal. We talk regulations. People think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. I have. Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Do you expect how it will work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think it's Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress. Pose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage, it would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing. You think about healthcare, you go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to a little bit cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill. It's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously and long. I think it's an important point. Trump, of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. When Obamacare under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, and no more that we can do, but I think Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because the first time.
Being an old guy gives you some history. I was there. And so important. I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic.
What's going on?
And accessibility and quality care. And so what I know is under Kamala before, and those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Trump, go back and remember this. He on was to kill Obama. On day one, he tried to send an executive order to the ACA. He signed on a lawsuit, the ACA, but
Oh, my bad.
Court, and he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that. Now, what the if you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're on, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala negotiated drug prices for the first time. Will come on, the most common there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never been that. But what because what he explained pre-Obamacare was possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, so what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure. Guess what happens? They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you older, gray, cancer, you're going to get kicked. That's why this system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you explained how you would protect pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace functional. Now, what Welch just said is true. What happened, the reason Obamacare is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem. He did so, preserved people's ACS coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump, inflation was take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from the Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way, get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people, whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens? So you think the individual mandate's a good idea? You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be, people expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help might not be able to afford it there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good healthcare once we get back. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way we made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you, Margaret.
Can I
We're-
address that?
I apologize. We're out of
Go
time.
ahead,
We have a
Laura.
number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority. How long should employers to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's going to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. So you go to you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time's up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees home taking care of their newborn? 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats too have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. Look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. Working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extremely difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for pressure on young families and especially young women. I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. I hear people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America. Jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable.
Solve the child shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the care shortage, we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this.
Thank you. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will the $6,000 credit for and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are, and this is the biggest issue. Listening, we're shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000, 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. We got an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family, and they not get the money to pay for that. They're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with child care and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but
Nora, let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for inflation. After the 2020 election, the President's campaign filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and others, looked at evidence and said widespread fraud. In the nation, Republicans and Democrats certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative elections. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Or on the future, we need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow misinformation. I think that democracy that we've seen in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when the protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. There's one, though, that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this. And the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because Donald Trump's inability to say, he is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to the power of the government to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear masks.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back. Both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
Oh, I don't think I have to mute this part. It's all good, though. Hmm. Yes, sir. All right. Be help. It's just you're deucing out. I think it was just you and I. So I'll probably log off. Appreciate you. Oh, it is service. Good evening. I know how to pronounce it. Namaste. Appreciate you, D Hill. Yes, sir. Yep. See you on Thursday, man. I don't even know what his lesson is supposed to be on. I'll find out tomorrow, though. Mm. All right, bro. Like always, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate y'all. Honestly, in the service, I've only heard about it in the chat. I've only heard about it in the chat. I haven't seen anything myself yet. Oh, I see the countdown.
Let's break down what we know and then the big questions still outstanding.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
And we are back with tonight's vice presidential debates.
When it ends, join us right here. Analysis. But now, back to the debate.
I'm gonna have to look it up, bro.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. Most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who missed the stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions to the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very, very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
A handshake. And Tim Walz, J.D. Vance squaring off for about 90 minutes in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, the CBS News studios, as their families come out to greet them after what was really a quite civilized debate. And I mean, perhaps that's one of the headlines we'll talk about as we turn to Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker, and Hallie Jackson, our senior Washington correspondent. Lester here, still with me in New York City.
They're probably talking shit to each other right now. Anyways, for the one other person that's in here, and for everybody that catches us later, I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for hanging out after the show with the debate. Forgot to mention it earlier again. Don't forget, when we get to 200, we're gonna do a money raffle, 200 subs, and if we earn your subscription with or without the raffle, it. Just hit the like. Y'all have a good night. See y'all on Thursday for Andre's show.